How to grow your card business. So I'm going to give you 10 steps that I have here on this phone about how to grow your card business. And many of these steps are also applicable to any business. So let's look at number one, know when to sell. You need to know when to sell your product. For example, if you have a card of a player and that player's team just won a championship, unless it's some type of generational player like a Messi, a Ronaldo, maybe someone in the lines of like Kobe, Steph Curry, generational, sell the card right away. For example, if you have a card and that team of that particular player just won a championship, and this card is of a player that's not the main star of the team, the main highlighted person, so to speak, sell that card as quickly as possible because the value of that card is probably going to be at its highest for a while. Now, that's not to say the card won't increase in time, but if your business is to make money, you have to know when to sell. You cannot hold on to cards forever. So if the card you have is of a player and that team just won a championship of that player, sell it. Maybe even if the card is that of a star player, you should still sell it. I was talking to a guy not long ago, and he bought a card of a particular player about 5 years ago when that team had just won a championship. And he told me he spent over, I think it was about $250. So it was over $200 for sure. The card now, 5 years later, is probably worth about maybe $80, $90, somewhere in that range. But he bought the card right when a team had just won a championship. So obviously that player's card value was going to be at its highest. So whoever sold him that card did really well because 5 years later, the value is not as high as it once was. So you need to know when to sell. Let's look at step number 2. Don't regret past sales. We are all going to sell a card that we're going to say, man, I should have held on to it. Or we're going to not sell a card when it was hot and we thought, man, I should have sold it when it was really valuable. And so you can't really control that aspect sometimes. Sometimes you don't know all the variables. Like I had some cards of some certain players. I didn't know those cards would be worth so much money later down the road. At the time, you just don't know. And that's okay. If your business is to make money selling cards, you're always going to see a card that you're going to say, I should have held on to. I was watching the guy King of the Cards not long ago when he was at the New York Knicks game, and he had sold a Victor Wembanyama card for a really high amount. The amount that that card was worth then at the time of this game, while the San Antonio Spurs were in the championship round, had increased quite a bit. And you could see in his face, he kind of like, I should have held on to it. But if you buy a card for 100, for example, and you sell it for 150, 200, you've still made your profit. If the card becomes worth $500 or $600 later down the road, that's okay. In that immediate moment, you still made the profit that you needed to make. And that's how you have to look at it, and you can't be upset with it. We're all going to sell things that we don't necessarily know what the true value of it will be or not be later down the road. We just don't know. Okay, let's look at step number 3. Know the card's true value. So when I say know the card's true value, what I mean is know what the card is worth even if it's not graded. I'll give you an example of what happened to me. I'd sold a really rare Kobe Bryant card to a card shop, and they paid me fair on the card. At least that's what I thought. What I didn't realize is that particular card of Kobe Bryant, even ungraded or even with a low grade, was still extremely valuable because of its rarity. So some cards, yes, they're only valuable if they have high grades. That's true. But there are some cards, just because the card in of itself is so rare, are still extremely valuable even if the card is not in the best shape. For example, my younger brother had a Nick Anderson precious metal gem card. Very, very hard cards to get. The card was beat up, corners were falling apart. I'm sorry, not so much the corners, but like the border was chipping away. And that's what I'm referring to, the border. And this particular card, I remember, was still worth more than most of the cards I had. And I had, rare Kobe Bryant rookies. And I was like, why is this card so valuable? Because that particular card is really hard to get. So even in a bad condition state, the card is still worth money. So don't let a dealer or someone else tell you, oh, the card's beat up. That might be true, but if the card is of a valuable player, even if it's beat up, it's still worth money. Even if the card is not of, let's say, a highlighted player, but the card in itself is rare, it's still worth a lot of money. So that's what you need to look into. So make sure you know the true value of your card. Let's look at step number 4. Do not fall in love with the product. If you really like collecting, then maybe stick with collecting. But you have to learn when to let a card go and not keep it. If you fall in love with your product, that's really bad. Imagine a chef falling in love with all the food he makes and wanting to eat it himself. Well, he wouldn't have a business. So it's the same way. If your goal is to make money in the card industry, you have to learn to say goodbye to those things which you hold on to. And remember, everything in life is temporary at the end of the day. None of these things we're taking with us at death. Someone else is going to get them. So the point I'm trying to make is don't fall in love so much with the card that you're not willing to let it go if there's a good profit there. I had some cards that I really liked, but I saw the value of what I was getting paid for them. And so some of these cards I had as a child, when I was a young boy, and I had to let them go because I can't let my love for my old past memories with those products dictate me losing out on a financial profit. Okay? Let's look at step number 5. Know what players are easier to push. So not all players' cards are going to sell the same. For example, I'm in Los Angeles. Anything with Kobe Bryant here sells pretty quickly because this is where he made his career, in Los Angeles. So you need to know what players are easier to sell and the market you're in. For example, I'm in Los Angeles, so anything with Lakers is going to probably sell much higher than if I was in Milwaukee, right? So you need to know what your demographic is and what the market is for the particular card you're trying to sell. Especially when it comes to sports. I'm in LA, so anything Dodgers, Ohtani, Kobe, those are going to be hotter sells than if I was trying to push something else. If I'm in New York, for example, the Yankees and the New York Knicks are going to be cards that are more likely going to sell quicker because that's the demographic that I'm in. Now, there are some universal players where they'll sell regardless, but I'm trying to get you to understand you have to know your demographic and you have to know your market. Okay, step number 6. If you're going to sell, you need to know who you're going to sell to. So you can make more money, obviously, selling to individuals because they don't have the overhead of a card shop, or maybe they're not running it like a business and they're willing to buy. For example, I had a card recently that I had listed online, and many of the bids I was getting were around 200, 180, like 180 to like 220, somewhere in that range. And I had one guy reach out to me on Facebook Marketplace, and the price I had the card listed for was $240, and he agreed to it right then and there. We met up, and he paid, and he was happy to pay. If I would have taken that card to like a shop, I don't think I would have gotten the $240. Now, so for that one-time sale of the $240, it was great. But let's say I'm constantly buying and reselling. Maybe it is good that I work out a deal with a local card shop or a reseller. Maybe I'm going to make less up front, but I will make more in the long term. Why? Because if I've got a shop who's willing to buy a lot of my $10, $20 cards, and they're willing to buy them for, $12 a piece, whatever it is, so they can make their profit, and I'm able to get these $12 cards for, $3, $4, it's probably worth me just selling to them because I know they're willing to buy more of those cards that might not necessarily be crazy high in value. So I'd be sitting on that inventory for a long time if I was trying to sell it to private people for, let's say, maybe $18. It's better if I can get the money right away and go sell 20 cards for 12 than if I'm sitting on them for months and I'm able to sell them for 18 a piece, because at that rate the money doesn't do me too much good because I don't have enough of it coming in to maybe offset my costs. So again, that's just my personal opinion. So if I have a really good reputable card dealer that I can work with and they're willing to buy a lot of my inventory that individuals wouldn't necessarily buy, even if I'm selling it to them at 70-80% value, if I'm getting the product and I'm still making my 20-30%, it's still definitely worth it. Don't look at it like, oh, I could have made more money if I would have sold to a private person. That's true, but you also have to consider the fact, how long are you going to sit on that inventory? You might be sitting on it for months, whereas that card person at a shop might buy all of it up front. So you have to consider that because your time is also valuable, right? So those are things to consider. Let's look at step number 7. I put always make sure know how to know how to look up the value of your card. And what I mean by that is you can go to eBay, is what most people do, but look at the last 4 or 5 sales for the card if they're recent. So what I mean by that is, let's say I have a rookie card of Otani, and the last three sales are 350, 450, and then I see one sold for 280. Maybe there was a dip in the market there. What you don't want to do is sell the card considering only the last sale. If the last couple sales were all done within, let's say, a month of each other, if you're going to sell to someone, kind of average it out, because maybe that one person selling just really needed the money, that a good deal just happened to take place. But if the overall trajectory of the card is valuable and you see a little dip, that's not kind of the average you would want to look at if you're trying to make profit. I would look at the last 3 or 4 sales and say, what is a ballpark average? Because you may just have a low sale there, and that could ultimately lower your evaluation of your card and cost you money. Okay, number 8, I have small buys can cost you more money. So what I mean by that is you have to know the true cost of your card. And this is what I mean. How much money does it take you to get that card or that product? For example, let's say someone is selling a card for $50 that I know I could sell for $75. Okay, $25 profit, not bad. But if I have to drive an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back, I lose 3 hours of my time. Is that card really worth the $25? Probably not. It'd be better to maybe message that person, depending on the platform, and say, hey, could I PayPal you and could you send me the cards? I know I had did this recently. I found some cards and the guy was just too far. So we worked out a deal where I PayPal'd him and he sent me the inventory. So you have to consider your time and energy. If you're going to drive somewhere and do all that and lose 3-4 hours of your day for $25, well, divide that $25 by 4, and that's what you're essentially paying yourself hourly, not to consider your gas and time. Think of it this way. If you had to pay a person to do that errand that you're going to do for that card, would it be worth it? So if I see that card that I know I can sell for $75 on sale for $50, let's say I had to pay a friend to go out for an hour and a half there, an hour and a half back. So there's 3 hours. I'm going to have to give that person at least $15 an hour. Well, there's $45. Let's say they're using their car and gas. I throw in an extra $10 in gas. That means that whole trip cost me anywhere from $50 to $55, somewhere in that range, right? So if that whole trip cost me $55 to get it, and I'm able to sell the card for $25 profit, I actually lost $25. That's how you have to consider it. Is it actually worth it? Now, if that person who's selling has, 50 of these cards, and you're going to buy a bulk item of it, then yeah, maybe it's worth it. But to do all that for one card to make even $20, $30, it's probably not worth your time. Okay, let's look at number 9. List the same product on many platforms. Yeah. So when I was trying to sell this particular card I had the card listed on Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp. Everyone on OfferUp was offering me the lower evaluations. Everyone on Facebook was offering me the higher evaluations. So you need to know what market does well for you, again, depending on your area. For me, I've noticed that the people on Facebook Marketplace in Los Angeles are willing to pay a better rate than those people are on OfferUp. Now, I've noticed when it comes to me purchasing cards so far, I've had better opportunities to get cards for a better discount on OfferUp. So my strategy right now is buying on OfferUp and making more money selling on Facebook Marketplace. Now, I did have an OfferUp buyer recently who bought from me, and it was about a 30% quote-unquote profit. I'm not considering my time and energy and expenses, but I bought a product for X amount and it was sold for 30% more. Give or take somewhere around that range. So again, you have to know what platforms to use, but look at the multiple platforms. Know who you're selling to and what platforms do best for your market. Now let's look at number 10. Throw in something extra. If somebody is going to be spending an extra $100 for you, give them that extra whatever it is. I recently had sold something to a guy and I threw in an extra card that I had got that was maybe worth, maybe $8, $9, something like that. But, he was spending good money with me. So for me to kind of put that card as a part of the deal, it wasn't too painful for me. So always treat those who are putting money in your pockets good. So if someone's spending $100 with you to buy your cards and you've got that card that you've been sitting on that's worth $5 and nobody's bought it, give it to them. Say, here you go. It's just a way to say thanks. And whether they ever buy from you again or not is not important. It's about sometimes just doing the right thing And if they are going to buy again in the future, they're more likely to remember you. Hey, you know what? That person was really good to me. They gave me an extra freebie. Let me give them a shot on the next fair deal. So those are my tips. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your advice when it comes to it. Even though this is about cards, a lot of these aspects are applicable to other business. Thank you so much.